Welcome to Paint Yourself into the Picture, healing conversations to help us create the most amazing picture of our lives. I'm Reba Linker, and I'm so glad you're here. Our guest today is part of our SHE-roes and Pathfinders series. Shiloh Sophia lives life as a great adventure narrated by the creative fire of her muse. I love that. She's been painting, writing poetry, publishing books, and teaching at universities, the United Nations, and in her own programs and around the world for over 20 years. She is the co-curator and founder of the Intentional Creativity Foundation and Cosmic Cowgirls, a woman and girl-owned school that serves between 500 and 2,500 women a month through revolutionary education. Currently, there are close to 200 teachers in the lineage of intentional creativity. Shiloh Sophia, I am so honored to meet you. What a great pleasure it is.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful, I said yes, because what a wonderful theme and title to be able to talk with you about and also to share with those who are gathered in our circle.
I know. I noticed that. It's paint yourself into the picture, and that's what you're all about. I have had so many stories from women who have had completely transformational experiences through your workshops. And I have to just say to open that I was very conflicted about which series to make you part of, because the work is so very healing. You are so much a representative of divine feminine energy. And yet I also wanted to connect with you about your leadership role. You have basically a groundswell, a tsunami of energy and women behind you. How did this all get started?
I think it goes back to the beginning of my youth. My family was very involved in women's rights and activism. I was born in 1970, and so I was swept right into the marches, and so there was a sense of community that developed at that time. So in a way, I was raised in a community of creatives, and I had a sense early on that I mean, who knows how this came to me, but I felt like there was a sense of isolation among the women, even in the community. And I felt like there was something we could do to end that experience of isolation. I felt like maybe it was a default setting or a preconception or some remnant from the patriarchy or something that kept us really separate. And so I'd always had this thought in my heart of like, how do we gather the women, and what does it look like in the models of the future? Of what kind of models are we creating? So I think it came from back then.
Amazing. I love the words gather the women. And I have to say, I've interviewed other people in the Divine Feminine series, and those words come up over and over.
Absolutely.
Gather the women. So I wanted to ask you, what's been the greatest, since that time, what's been the greatest evolution in your work and in your thinking about your work?
I would say that, again, a little earlier back, to think about in the women's movement, there was a separation. There became a separation between sort of the really radical feminists, the separatists, and the more feminine women's rights activists. And that happened in my own family. So we had an actual divide sort of the dykes and the divas, so to speak. And I'm sort of right in the middle of that sort of, really earthy and strong, and also love to be playful and beautiful. So I found myself in the middle of this separation that continued on into, my 30s of my family. And I started calling the family back together to teach, as did my cousin Bridget, who runs a really amazing alternative Montessori school. We both went back into education and had all of our family members come and teach. So it's this sense of, once again, everyone was under the same roof, but on behalf of children and of women. So it really came back together around education and wanting the gifts that were in our own family and the community to be brought to light, to not be separate anymore. Because when they were separate, they were each teaching, but it was all fragmented. And so now there's a sense of we're all co-creating together around a movement of education, and not a fight for or against something, rather a conscious design of collaboration, bringing our gifts to light.
So how did you marry those two ideas, or these two separate concepts of what it is to be a woman,
Yeah.
and,
Well, it's kind of inherent in the name of our tribe called Cosmic Cowgirls, which I founded as an LLC with 25 other women. We decided to do a for-profit instead of a not-for-profit, even though we're service-based, so that women could make money, so that there could be resources available. And so Cosmic is, of the stars and just out there and sparkly and playful and who knows where we're from. And then Cowgirl is, Cowgirls were the first performing female athletes to publicly take on an archetype and a name and a fictional, is that a word, fictional? Fictitious character. And so there was a sense of that we could be cosmic and out there, but we could also be grounded and in here, or as we say, sacred and irreverent together. So somehow the language and I would say the collective field energy of the community brought us together. And most of the members of my community have an experience of themselves as both sacred and irreverent, coming together in one woman, and that those two are not fighting. They don't need to be separate. The virgin and the whore don't need to be separate. The right and the left brain don't need to be separate. In fact, both are dynamic independently, but as a unified presence where we're not cutting parts of ourselves off. And so Cosmic Cowgirls was the coming together of the teachings, the community, and also the seemingly disparate aspects of ourselves that aren't really separate. We've just been trained to keep them separate for safety purposes.
for the comfort of others sometimes as well.
Yeah, and also fear if people saw who we were, it would be unacceptable. We would be, labeled witches and branded outcasts, and that still happens. And, we're doing it anyway because we just really don't care what they think.
I love it. I love the sacred and irreverent combination. It's so healing because women are so multidimensional. We're not straight ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's marvelous. So what has changed? I mean, it sounds like from the beginning, like this core idea was so powerful. It's really carried you forward.
Yeah.
I see that. What's shifted along the path? Because you've been doing it for now like 20 years or so.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a mystery to my community that I say I'm not a great manager and I'm not a great leader because I am extremely muse driven. So I'm very spontaneous. Things are changing all the time. And we run our business from a perspective of what wants to happen next, not what's logical or linear. And so in traditional models of leadership, I wouldn't fit into any of those categories because I simply don't operate like that. But the women who have been brave enough to gather with me to bring this community and the teachings forward have come to trust and understand that this kind of leading is leading, yes, totally from the heart, of course. I mean, that's a given for us, but it's all the senses have to be on board. We have to feel it. We have to know it. We have to have felt it in the community. We have to have listened to the collective. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. If we just feel it's time, we just go. And that doesn't make sense to most people who are either coming out of the corporate world. Entrepreneurs who have been doing it for a while understand that you move on the pulse of life, not a business plan, an agenda, or a budget. It just doesn't work like that when you are led from the creative. The creative lives in a non-time, non-linear space. And so it's not a list. You're pulling from all these different areas. And sometimes I'll say to team members like, oh my gosh, I have this thing and we have to do it. And we have to do it tomorrow. And I'm going to stay up all night and I'll put this thing together. And they'll say, okay, well, it's probably 2 years out. So the other thing is that the living from the creative doesn't necessarily fit time. So you have to surround yourself with team members who are either also that way or who understand the fluidity of what our co-director, Mary McDonald, calls the feminine business paradigm. I think it's really, the heart male-led business paradigm, but women are able to find a way to do it in a way that works for them. So it's certainly not for everybody, but it's filled with fire and joy and change. And it's based, this kind of leadership is based in a deep listening to, I would say, the collective joy and the collective suffering. So anything that I offer to my community is designed to meet the needs of those that we serve, combined with the thing that's lit up for me right now. So it has to be both. We can't just give and give and give just because there's a need. It actually has to be directly connected to creativity for me and what I'm feeling lit up about, or I simply don't have my body and my spirit, my field doesn't give me the extra to like push it forward. Yeah. And so I know well enough now not to do things that I don't feel as fire in my heart.
That's very brilliant. Now, this series is called SHE-roes and Pathfinders. And it really is a sense of finding a new path, because like you say, this isn't something you can learn in business school and get the business plan, etc. You really are feeling your own way forward, and you yourself have no idea where the path is leading you.
No.
So that's tremendously exciting, but it's tremendously new.
Yeah, and it's risky too, to be clear. You know, you don't know as an entrepreneur, if you're a pathfinder and a leader, you could be in a corporation, but you could also be an entrepreneur. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're leading this way, there's a huge amount of risk involved, which I have experienced tons of. Wow, that was so successful. Can you believe that even happened? You know, I've sold millions of dollars of paintings. And then I've also, opened huge galleries in the, gallery district of San Francisco and failed. So there's this real sense of failed, meaning, we only stayed open for 4 months. And then I had to go do something else because I couldn't afford that model of what my imagination was creating for me. So there is a lot of risk inherent in it. And you have to be ready to live on the edge of your seat if you're going to do it like that, which again, I don't even recommend, because it's not for everybody. And there is a lot of weaving that needs to happen. It can't be in isolation. You have to have trusted team members. Also, you have to have a lot of know-how yourself. Like, my husband, Jonathan, and I, we run 98% of the technology. Every graphic you see for every program I have at Cosmic Cowgirls, I made it. Every sales page, I made it. We have teams of support, but I'm the designer. I handle 100% of the marketing. So it's like, I don't just have the idea. I'm actually the one who puts it into space and says, here it is. So it's if I'm speaking to women who are looking at what their leadership is, it's almost like, I'm not saying to do what I'm doing. I'm not one of those teachers that says, I have done this and now you can too, because I actually have no idea. What I do know is that when anyone lives from the creative heart and has love for others, what we call the beloveds in it, there's a sense that you're moving towards them and they're moving towards you. And so it's this divine moment of intersection. And that is how I teach entrepreneurship, that we're coming together, we call it the red thread, and we're shortening the distance. And finally we meet face to face. And that's where the divine appointment happens.
Wow. Well, I want to actually honor something that is in your bio that I didn't read in the beginning. And it's just so astonishing. And I want to talk more about the people that you serve. So this is the quote from the bio. Her soul work is inspired by the idea that self-expression is a basic human right, that each person has a right to know how they think and feel, and the freedom to express that in the world. Now, I think that's so brilliant, because it is right, and it is so important, and it is so challenging to know and express.
Yeah.
How did you focus? How did you find that focus?
That came into the bio when we started bringing the work that we do called intentional creativity to the United Nations. And I started researching what did the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, what did it say about the right to be self-expressed? And by self-expressed, I don't mean just that you have a right to paint. I don't mean like that, although, love that, but actually that you have a capacity to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that there are resources and education and a mindset available inside of our institutions and systems, which gives you access to that aspect of yourself, which even at very high level education, universities, and even art schools, they don't actually really teach you that. Even in depth psychology, it's barely touched to access that self and find out who that is and let that self have a voice. And I think if people aren't taught to do that, they don't actually know what they stand for. They don't actually know how to pass on the resources. They don't actually know what the right move is to bring water to the village or whatever. It goes down to the most basic things. Creativity is in everything. So if we're not taught to think, to be conscious, really just to know who we are, to be conscious, to be awake, then we don't know where we stand. So the United Nations actually put in a piece about the right to be self-expressed. It's extremely powerful. It's just like, okay, they actually said this is important. And so we bring creativity to the United Nations. And my mentors will say sometimes, well, can you talk about these issues regarding women? And can you write about these things? And I say, look, if it isn't regarding women and creativity directly, I'm not talking about it. This is my piece of thread. And so when I go there, I go with the perspective that what's needed is creativity. Mm-hmm. What's needed is creativity. I'm not talking about talent. I'm going to separate creativity from talent. Every single being is creative. This has nothing to do with being a good painter or having talent or skill. That connection really needs to be rewritten in our psyche and in our educational process.
Right. And it means so much, I'm sure, to people all over the world, but it means a lot at home. I mean, even for people who are well off and educated, it's still a challenge. As you said, in the psychology department, still a challenge to what do I really think? What do I really feel? What do I really know? Who am I? All those questions are profound, and I love that you're addressing them so head on.
Yeah, and I feel like it is a little bit of a journey to guide someone to land there into an awake place. But a huge amount of the work that we do and the teachers in our community do is to create creative catalytic environments in which someone could arrive at that place for themselves.
Right.
And there is a path. There is a little bit of a formula that can happen. Some people have a mountaintop experience, but you know what? Tons of people don't. I work with so many people who haven't had it. They don't know what they're passionate about. They don't know what their purpose is, and now they feel ashamed that they don't know.
All right.
Right? So as I think one of the powerful things that leaders can do right now is to design experiences in which they give those people that they're serving an opportunity to become conscious and to then choose who they are and how they're going to show up and what they think and know. And it's like one day you're one way and the next day you're another way. I mean, that's how it was for me. I was like, I don't know what I was doing before. And then all of a sudden I was now conscious and I was like, wow, that was just yesterday. So it can really happen at the level of lightning quick.
And that's what you do you do a lot of art, obviously, for people who don't know you that well. And it's really, as you say, it's not about creating a gallery worthy painting. It's about, it's a journey of discovery.
Yes, absolutely. I did fine art painting. Well, not fine art in the classical sense, but I mean, I sold, lots of paintings in galleries, my own galleries and others. That was the first 10 to 15 years of the career, included a focus on that with teaching on the side. And then in around 2009, I went more focused on the teaching part because I saw what was happening for the people viewing the images. Mm-hmm. And then the people that I was teaching it to. And I was like, wow, there's something really amazing happening here. What is this? Yeah. And how do I get language around it so that I can duplicate this experience for someone else and then teach others to duplicate the experience? And that's what we're actually doing. So the way that we work with painting yourself into the picture is to design an experience, a painting experience, where you access that interior story and you bring it out to the canvas, especially if people don't have skill. It works even better because you can't dominate your own experience. And then you see what arises, and then you witness it, and you receive a message from your subconscious and sometimes the unconscious if you're ready for that. So it's like it gives it's access. It just gives people access to the soul language. And that's, so our classes include painting. It's ultimately not about painting. It's ultimately about, this is the fastest thing I have found, the fastest ritual I have found that allows someone to cross a threshold into listening more authentically to their internal experience and to begin to eradicate what's been called the critic into a whole other way of being in the world.
Well, full disclosure, I did one of the just a 2-hour workshop or 1-hour online experience with you, and it is magic, and it is so effective, and it's so amazing. I really have to say,
thank you.
Great teachers of this time, because you just turn that key and it opens the door, and it's mind-blowing that you have designed it to do that. Let me just, I know we have to wrap up soon, so I want to get to everything. I want to say, where's your path taking you next?
We are in the process of designing catalytic experiences for people to walk into in a physical and live streaming space. So myself and my colleagues at the Intentional Creatives Guild are creating healing environments that are designed to help people have a reset. I can't think of a sexier word right now, but it's like a reset button for their field, for their physical body, for their heart, that you would come in and you would work with painting and also energy healers and guides who can support you so that you can get yourself into the space where you need to be, so that you can go on with this very mysterious universe that we find ourselves in right now. So designing experiences that are catalyzations for consciousness. And there's a lot of spirit in there, but we don't have a lot of language around it. It just happens. It just happens. And we want people to be able to be moved to a new place. So that's really what we're working on as a community. And in that community, we have about 200 teachers, but we serve thousands and thousands of people. So we're going to be having sort of little pods all over the world where you can walk in and have this experience. That's really what we're working on. That's the big picture. That's the future for us.
Is that like a one-day thing, or is it you go?
There's going to be, great question. There's so much structure. You have this amazing idea, and then there's all this.
Picture it a little bit better.
So yeah, we're going to be having days that are called Muse Days that are one day, and you walk in, no painting experience, music, chocolate, dancing, painting, and it's really an introduction to the work. And then we also are going to be having week-long, more clinic-like creative experiences where we're going to be doing things like having thermography in the clinic and having acupuncture. So painting with all these different healing modalities. And so it's those will be sometimes a day or two. We have a small inn here, and some of our other teachers have retreat centers as well. And then my husband, Jonathan, also does amazing organic cooking. So it's like this, how do you give yourself this whole ritual that someone else designs for you? And what are the packages that can happen inside of? So day-long, weekend, and week-long resets. And it's really the thing that my community members, the other women leaders, the priestesses that I work with, it's the things we would do for ourselves that we're now curating as an experience for others. So it's coming, and it feels like destiny for me. It has that big energy, and it also feels like that it's so important. I mean, I just want to just say this, that when you're leading like at a level where you're calling people into circle on a regular basis, it's so important to find women who are willing to lead right beside you, who they may have their own school, their own philosophy, their own methodology. They don't need to constantly be separating and reinventing the wheel over and over and over. So now we're all separate.
Right.
We can be sovereign and separate, but we also need to stand really together. And that, I feel like, is, old master student transcendence model is not working. We really need to co-curate, stand together as sovereigns, have our own thing, but do it together too. And so the future of the work is shared leadership, and each person bringing their unique gift, and their unique gift that is current for them now. I mean, that's a big part of intentional creativity, is the teacher leads from where they are today. Someone just died, a war started, whatever's going on, whatever joy or tragedy, it's all included, and it's happening now, and nothing needs to be disincluded. So that teacher isn't performing, isn't separating themselves and putting a pretend face. They're actually just being who they're being that day. And then you're living your life. This isn't like separate from who you are. Like, it's a whole integrated life. You also don't have to be a rock star or a SHE-roe to call others into circle. That's a big part of the teaching too, is like, are you brave enough to call the circle? Because if you are, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be the one brave enough to call the circle. So there's also leadership at all these other levels that isn't hierarchical. Right? It's not like, this is the big leader who does this, and then these little people over here, like, all that stuff has to go away. And we just have to lead from the heart. And it's going to take some time, but it's happening now. It's happening for all of us and for all of you,
I see it too. And that is, I just got goosebumps when you were talking about that. That's so incredible. Please let my viewers know how they can find you and where they can find you.
Absolutely. The easiest place to go for now is just cosmiccowgirls.com. That's where we host all the classes. I have 5 different businesses with different names and different websites, but that's a sort of a one-shot. Go find it. We also have the Intentional Creativity Foundation.org that has a teacher tab. And so if you're looking to work with somebody in intentional creativity in your area, you can just go on over there and look up your city and state and see if there's someone where you are. And if not, you could teach it, so those are a couple of ways to find us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shiloh, Sophia. It's been such an honor and such a pleasure to meet you. And
oh, thank you. I appreciate so much. I love speaking with women who can listen and love in the same moment. And when I'm speaking, I can feel how much you're receiving and appreciating, and then collaborating with me in the moment, which totally shifts what I'm able to tell you. So thank you for modeling that.
Thank you. I loved every word. I'm so on board with you. I'm so excited about what's happening. So I really thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you.
And I wanted to thank the viewers. Thank you so much for being with us as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And if you like what you're seeing, please stay in touch. My website is rebalinker.com. My Facebook group is Leaders in Self-Love. Please subscribe and like the video. Leave your comments. I love to read your comments. And join us again next week for another healing conversation. Until then, remember that this is your turn to shine. Learn how to paint yourself into the picture. Because
that's right.
This is how we heal. Blessings.
Blessings. Thank you.